Our community's online service. So glad to be joining you today. And today is Mother's Day, and so we'll talk about that a little bit too. But it's a beautiful day. I decided to sit outside and record, and it's a beautiful park area here. Got trees behind me. We got the birds singing, a light wind blowing, and I always tell people that it's so easy to forget about our this things that good in our lives because we just hear them all the time and we don't think about them. And I always think the birds singing and chirping is such a. I sometimes use that for one of my gratitudes when I'm writing those in my daily journal. It just reminds us of the beauty and the. I don't know. They sound joyful to me, and so I hope that they are. I hope you can hear them a little bit today as we're talking. So anyway, so this is a big day for us. It's Mother's Day. I hope all of you have, for you that have mothers still alive, you've wished them happy Mother's Day, and for you that your mothers have passed on, find some good things to think about with them. I'm sure you can, and it's hard to lose your moms, and which I've done. So it's but we need their legacy to move on and to be loving and healthy. And so, if you're here today listening to me, I'm going to make the assumption that you're in recovery and that you've had trauma and abandonment in your lives. And so the purpose of all this is for us to become aware of the trauma and abandonment effects in our lives so that we can put awareness to it. We can put objectivity to it a little bit more so we can remove some of the toxic shame that we may be feeling, some of the confusion that we feel about ourselves so that we can move forward and think about we talk about in here quite a bit about having a rich, full, meaningful life. And the way I define that is that you have good connections in your life with family and healthy friends, and I should say healthy families too, because many of us came from some pretty tough families. That we have purpose, that we have reasons to get up in the mornings, we have reasons to live, we have reasons to do things right, and we have a faith in God of love, a loving God who is here for us. And we also have not only do have purpose and connection and faith in God, but that maybe, just maybe, we can enjoy ourselves just a little bit. It's hard for us when we're in our addictive life cycle. We are so destructive to ourselves and others, and it makes it hard for us to have any kind of good days. And if we do, we probably feel bad about it or wonder what's going to happen bad to us soon after that. So we just have to keep remembering that we do have toxic shame. We have lots of things going on, but we also have a God of love, and He loves us. He knows our hearts. He knows who we really are. He sees through all the craziness and the destruction and the behaviors that we're doing that harms others. And if you're family members of someone who's addicted and you don't know what to do, one of the best things you can do is to turn your life, your will over to God. Get out of His way and let God do His work. We don't want to prolong the inevitable, because when we're addicted, we have to get through it. There's no shortcuts. I wish there was, but there are none. Every time I've tried to do shortcuts with others who I work with, or even myself, I have found it doesn't work. You have to go through the process. It's about process, process, process. Going to support meetings, stopping, understanding the trauma and abandonment that ravages your life. Don't be so defensive about your life, but come to see it as it is, and then you can move on. So we talk about in NorthStar a lot. We talk about, I'll bet their ACE score is high. It's kind of what we say now. Like, someone will bring in a story about how they ran into someone who was mean, rude, all that stuff. Just, clearly dysfunctional. And so now we say, in a very loving way, I'll bet their ACE score is high. And so I'm going to lead this to what I want to talk to you about, why I'm doing this on Mother's Day. Mothers, if you're a mother, or obviously you're the child of a mother, all of us are, We know how powerful our mothers are. And that cuts both ways, because there's no question that I believe as a man, I cannot understand the depth of the love that mothers have for their children. You carried them, you birthed them, you nurtured them. Certainly I did some of that too, but not all the stuff you did. Certainly didn't carry them. And I just think there's a connection there. It's one of the most beautiful connections in the world, and also necessary. But there's the other side to this, is that if you yourself are addictive, and again, when we talk about addiction, we talk about substances, we talk about compulsive behaviors, and we talk about being addicted to people. As a mother, because you're so powerful, because you're so important, because your love and connection is so critical to the success of your children, you need to make sure you're healthy. Being healthy is the greatest and most absolute wonderful gift you can give your children. When you're running around being addictive, when you're running around being cruel, when you're running around trying to outrun away from your past, you're not the mother that you can be. So make sure you hear this. This is actually, I suppose you could call it a backhanded compliment, but mothers, you are so vital. You are so important to your children's well-being. You must be healthy. You need to be healthy enough to set boundaries. You need to be healthy enough to say no. You need to be healthy enough to love your children, to pay attention to your children, to connect with your children. You need to be healthy enough to have healthy relationships in your life. You need to be healthy enough to get unhealthy people out of your lives and out of your children's lives. It's hard. If it was easy, we'd all do it. I'm always reminded about, there's this great journal out there. It's called the Journal of Computers and Human Behavior. And it's such a, when I first read about that, what a genius idea. And so I've read some of the article. I mean, some of them aren't all that interesting in their research journals, but some of them are pretty fascinating. And so one of them I read about was that children between the ages of 3 to 5, the emergency room visits are increasing because the kids are having to raise their attention-seeking behaviors to a riskier level so that their parents will notice them, because the parents are on their phones too much. I think that's a symbolic story of what we have to be careful of in our society now. I love technology. I'm sitting here recording this, and I'm going to send it somewhere, and it's going to be on YouTube, it's going to be on Facebook. It's a great thing. But too much of anything is not good. And the other problem is that when we become overwhelmed with technology, we withdraw from people, we withdraw from important activities, and we become consumed with the screen time in front of us. So again, the average teenager right now is on their phone. They have screen time of 6.4 hours a day. And we can all say, wow, that's terrible, but we probably need to look at ourselves a little bit. I don't know about you, but like when I go to a restaurant somewhere, sometimes it's not unusual to see an entire family on their phones, nobody talking to each other, nobody even looking at each other. So I'm just telling you, be purposeful in being a mother, because you are so important. You are the most powerful force on the planet in many ways. The love you have, the connections you have are hard for me to understand. But I see lots of damage. I see lots of devastation. I see lots of pain from children of mothers who are not healthy enough to connect, were not healthy enough to overcome their own burdens. And let's be honest, I love the United States of America, but it is a violent country. Women, you have to face violence more than you should ever have to. But the biggest thing you can do is set those boundaries early. Trust yourself, love yourself enough to get people out of your lives that do not love you or care about you. And I hate to say it, but sometimes that's family members. So you have to do what's right for you, what's right for your kids. If you do that, you will not regret it. one of the psychologists that I like talks about how 92% of our behavior is based on our childhood. I think that's true. Now, we're all adults, and it's our job to recover from whatever happened in our childhood. But let's not make adulthood quite so hard by carrying so much trauma and abandonment with us. I mean, they're just too much. And if you're listening to me, there's a pretty good chance that you've experienced trauma and abandonment somewhere in your life. You know, I think about my own mother. She was a great woman. She worked hard. We grew up on a farm. She was the queen of the dairy barns, what we used to kid about. That was kind of her place. That and cooking, and she loved to cook for people. But my mother didn't like herself very much. Her self-esteem was too low. And it affected me. It affected how I felt about myself. And it's as good as she did, so many things she did right. Her low self-esteem and shame at times was too much. And it became a problem for me because then I saw me as the problem. Now, I've worked on all this, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm very fortunate to have the parents I had. But we all have our flaws. Certainly, I have 3 kids, and I've made many mistakes as a parent. But it's never too late to fix them. It's never too late to do things different. It's never too late to get healthy. And if you're a mother of small children, this is your time to get healthy, to be that woman that you were made to be, that loving, connecting, sensitive, strong woman that you are. And if you can see that is the most important gift you can give people, man, you are going to be an all-American when it comes to when your kids are later in life. They're going to be talking about how great you were. And the other thing I always tell, this is kind of a parenting tip here, I always tell people, don't focus so much on today, but think about when your kids are 25 years old, will they be glad that you took a stand with them, that you were tough on them, that you just didn't let them do what they wanted? Because again, I see, it just seems like a lot of parents are so overwhelmed right now. And so just surviving, and we're not setting the boundaries that we need to. We're not showing the love that we need to because it's just so much going on. So I challenge all of you to do that. And mothers, again, can't say it enough. You're the most wonderful, loving people on the planet. Make sure you're healthy as you can be. Make sure that you have taken into consideration the pain, the violence, the trauma, the abandonment that you suffered as a child, and don't impose it on your kids, but break the cycle today. You can do it. It's tough. I know stories out there that are so hard. So I'm going to read 2 Corinthians 7:10. This is Paul writing about his tough life. And again, he was jailed, he was beaten, shipwrecked, all these things. I mean, he probably should have died several times. And this was after he became a Christian. So, life didn't get easier for him. But he had purpose, he had meaning. But he talks about that somewhere in his life he had a physical handicap, not sure what it is, but it was significant. And he's talking about the desire to get rid of it. And when God clearly said to him, no, it's part of you, it's who you are. And I take that as an analogy for all of us in recovery. We don't want to take away the terrible things that happen to you. We certainly don't want any more of it. But we don't want to take it away because it wouldn't be you anymore. What I see, again in recovery, is you are the greatest people on the planet when you recover because you have empathy. You understand. You know what it's like to be feeling the shame and the pain and the attacks and all the things you should have never experienced as a child. You know about them. And if you didn't have the trauma piece, you had the abandonment piece where your parents were so broken themselves, or just like my mother, she was a great mother in so many ways, but her low self-esteem was an impact on her children. And so figure out ways to get yourself in place where you can be healthier. And again, if you're local, I certainly encourage you to come to NorthStar. We have childcare. We feed you on Wednesdays and Fridays. We really do take away a lot of the reasons not to come. And so I hope you can do it. It takes courage, but you're not going to be judged. You're going to be supported. You're going to be loved because everyone else in there also um, understands what you're going through because they've been through it. The vast majority of people in North Star have high adverse childhood experiences. Surveys high scores, higher than the average population, and that's consistent with addiction and recovery. It's hard to become addicted if you haven't been traumatized. And abandonment a little trickier because you don't always see it, but it's there, and it makes you see yourself in a less than positive light, in a way that you're not lovable, important, you don't know who you are, you lack self-awareness of you, and that's why abandonment's just as deadly. It's just a little bit different. So Paul talks about, because of the extravagance of these revelations, and so I wouldn't get a big head, I was given a gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations. Satan's angel did his best to get me down. What he in fact did was push me to my knees. No danger then of walking around high and mighty. At first I didn't think of it as a gift and begged God to remove it. 3 times I did that, and then he told me, "My grace is enough, it's all you need. My strength comes into its own in your weakness." Once I heard that, I was glad to let it happen. I quit focusing on the handicap and began appreciating the gift. It was a case of Christ's strength moving on my weakness. Now I take limitations in stride, and with good cheer. These limitations that cut me down to size, abuse, accidents, opposition, bad breaks, I just let Christ take over. And so the weaker I get, the stronger I become. I think this is such a great example of recovery for us. Um, what I see with people who have recovered is you're stronger, you're more empathetic, you're more loving. Again, I'll say this 100 times. I don't wish trauma on anybody, but for you that have got through trauma, congratulations, and now understand it so you can move forward and not see life as so awful. You keep hiding, and because remember, for us, recovery, addiction is about habitual behavior to avoid pain. We do all these things throughout our young lives and our current lives where we're just avoiding the emotional pain that goes with this, the shame, the drama, all the stuff that goes with this, and it just leads to chaos and a chaotic life, and we get too angry, we get too sad, we get too depressed, we get too anxious. We don't counter that with feelings of joy and love and gratitude because we're so busy surviving. And surviving's not a way to live. It is not. You certainly live, but it's not a way you want to live. Life's going to give us trouble. Life is tough. We're going to have our ups. We're going to have our downs. But man, we never see the ups because we're so busy surviving. We're waiting for the next bad event to happen. We distrust everyone. We put our defensive wall up. We call it the porcupine index. We may let people know our names, and we may smile and be cheerful with them, but we don't let anybody in. And sure, it does help us in some ways. It keeps us emotionally safe, but we're also very lonely in those moments. It doesn't have to be that way. We can learn to be discerning. We can learn to be wise. We can learn to set boundaries. All those things that help us so much to have a rich, full, meaningful life. And so Paul tells us very dramatically and with great gratitude that whatever this handicap is, he now sees it as a gift. And I know it's hard to hear this, but we've got to see our trauma and abandonment backgrounds as a gift. We don't have a choice. We either are going to continue to live in misery and shame and just chaos and wrecking our lives, or at least at best living mediocre lives where we're always so mean to ourselves and we see ourselves as never enough, or we can move forward and we can take all this and help us to live our lives better. You can't turn the clock back. I wished we could. So here's the problem. when your brain, when you've had trauma, when you've had abandonment in your lives and not dealt with it, remember, that's what the key here is, that we haven't dealt with it. Our brain is so busy working to keep us safe, to keep us from being harmed, to keep us from being hurt. And the fact is, what that means is we're going to get hurt more, because we're going to be so lonely. We're not going to have purpose in our lives. We're not going to have the connection we want. And so the problem is, recovery is very difficult. I guess I'm telling all of you that already. All of you already know this. But it's worth the trip. But it's hard, because you have to face uncomfortable feelings. You have to face uncomfortable realities. You have to face things that you don't want to think about with yourself. But if you don't deal with them, if you don't face them, your shame is just going to keep you down. It's going to just keep reminding you of how bad you are and how you don't deserve to have anything. Shame is not just about being embarrassed about things you did wrong. It's about having this inner feeling of abandonment and just wincing shame about things you did in your past. And it's about feelings that bewilder us. It induces anxiety in us. It has us believing that we're weak, that we're dependent, that we're not capable. None of that's true. God gave you love and skills and knowledge. We're all blessed with so many wonderful things, but when we're living out of the shadow of trauma and abandonment, all we see are the bad things about ourselves. And again, it's just not true. There's so many things. And I think about, for you, I don't know how many of you have diagnoses from your childhood. You probably have ADHD, and some of you may have had oppositional defiant disorder and all those things. Just now that you're becoming more aware of things, at least think about it a little bit. And maybe just consider that trauma and abandonment may have caused some of your acting out behaviors that were misdiagnosed. I don't understand in this country, and probably the world, why we don't see trauma as more common and significant than we do. And I hate to say it, guys, but a pill's not going to fix everything. If you're on antidepressants, stay on them. If it's helping you, keep on them. But talk about stuff. Get yourself so you can handle stuff and move on. Adverse childhood experiences, the ACE we talk about, it really does illustrate our number one public health crisis that we don't deal with. We just don't deal with it. We see incidents as standing alone. We don't put it all together to see this big picture of what it's doing to us. And if you have not taken an adverse childhood experience, it's something you might want to look at sometime. It's all over the internet. You can get it. But understand it. The reason isn't to make you feel bad about your childhood. It's to get you to go, oh, this makes sense. So just remember, the higher your score, the higher the misery. And the higher the chances of you acting out and living with addictions, living with pain and anxiety and depression. So much of it is built around your childhood experiences. And let's not forget, I think the most important statistic out there on the ACE is that for people who have not worked on themselves, who have not resolved their trauma base, if you score a 6 or higher, you will die on average 20 years younger. We blame ourselves. We think we're the problem. And we're probably told that in many ways. At minimum, the dysfunction, the trauma, the abuse is met with silence. So it's okay now for you to deal with it, to move forward, to resolve it, to understand it. And the reason why people die 20 years younger on average is because there's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse, reckless living, dysfunctional living, terrible relationships. Basically, 6 and more people who score 6 or more in the ACE go out and find other people who scored 6 or more in the ACE. And you don't have any role modeling what healthy looks like. And so you get together probably with trauma bonding, where you're bound together with all the chaos. And it keeps you together, but it's a hard way to live. And it makes it so dysfunctional and destructive and, unfortunately, many times violent. So what we have to do is figure out ways to become aware of the pain in our lives. And who wants to do that? I mean, come on. I get it. No, I don't like it. I don't like having to face my pain. I don't like to have to face the things I'm ashamed of and embarrassed of, and that core feeling of unworthiness. And it's easier to live. I choose to live very busily. I choose to work all the time. That's one of the ways I avoid my pain. Some of you out there avoid your pain by getting on social media a lot and being angry and mad at the world, or looking at other people and judging yourself and seeing how bad you are. Others of us, we get involved with broken relationships over and over. And of course, many of us get involved in substances. It makes sense. That's why I don't judge people who are addicted. It makes total sense to do it. Your pain's high. Your feelings about yourself are so low and negative. It makes sense to become addictive. At least for the moment, it works. The problem, of course, as we know, is as we keep doing it, our pain avoidance becomes a creation of more of pain as we go forward. And that's why we finally decide to recover. But we don't have to protect ourselves from the past. We don't have to hide from it. We don't have to. What we need to do is we need to do something about it. And we need to do some things. We have to be aware of what's happened in our lives. We have to be aware that we were children. We didn't cause most of this. And I would say, if you were an abuser, you can recover too. We were abusers because we were abused. It's not that hard to understand. That causes a lot of shame too. It goes both ways. But we can recover. We don't have to carry that burden with us from the past. We can move on. That's what the 12 steps are so wonderful about illustrating. So do you have any of these symptoms? Do you have lack of sleep? Do you have physical and mental fatigue all the time? Can't handle changes in your lives? Little things create issues for you. You become anxious around a lot of people. You're constantly worried about what others are thinking. You have a hard time controlling your emotions. You act out. You throw things. You yell, scream. You get mad at the wrong people. You have road rage, all those things. You are hypervigilant and hypersensitive to actions of others around you. You overfunction or you underfunction in relationships. This sound like any of us. We live with no purpose. We get by. We expect the worst. Yeah, sounds fun, isn't it? A lot of us, that's all we know. And that's all we saw as kids. For many of us, we are easily triggered by stuff. How about some of you, any of you ever get this where you're so tense all the time? Your muscles are you're just like this all the time. Someone tells you to relax and you're like, I am relaxed. What are you talking about? That's called body armoring. You are preparing for the next bad event. You are braced for what the next whatever is going to happen. That's no way to live. It's no way to live. Do you feel like sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror and you wonder who you're looking at? You feel you have your thoughts over here and your feelings over here, and they're not connected. A lot of times they're counter to how you feel and think, and that causes a lot of unhealthiness and discomfort in your life. But when we're not connected to our feelings, when we're not aware of them, when we're not managing our feelings, they can really give us problems. And the problem is, if we don't deal with this stuff, we become indecisive, or we become very decisive on decisions we shouldn't make. We become frazzled, become disorganized. We have lots of strife in our relationships. We're on autopilot, no joy, no happiness. We're just getting by, right? We make mistakes. We fail a lot. And so the problem is that with trauma and abandonment, it's hard to stop it. It's hard to get past it. But some things you have to do. You have to connect again. You're going to hear this over and over from me, but it's so true. You need to get yourself in a support group. I wished I could tell you you're alone, but you are not. There are so many people who have been abused, who have been abandoned as children, who then have had other abuse and trauma in their adult lives. But it doesn't have to be this way for the rest of your life. You can make things happen. It's hard. I wish I could tell you that recovery is easy. It's not. But I will tell you it can get easier. But you got to get through the first parts. You have to be willing to find the right groups, the right people to trust, and then you got to start dealing with things. When you start crying, when you start really feeling bad about stuff with someone who knows what they're doing, you're on your way to recovery. I always tell people, they'll say, I want to get healthy. And I'll say, are you really sure? Because if you recover, if you get on this journey, there's going to be lots and lots of pain in it. Because don't forget, you've built your life around avoiding pain. And it just isn't the way to go. So find groups you connect with, find professionals you can talk to. Reduce your time with toxic people. And I hate to say it, some of that's going to be family members, at least till you can get further down the road. Start figuring out what gives you purpose in life. Start becoming aware of those moments where you just start pounding on yourself and you're so cruel to yourself. And one way to help you overcome that is to do a gratitude journal every day. If not every day, every other day, whatever it takes. Write down what you're grateful for. Get out there and get exercise. Pray, meditate, stop the world for a moment. Do something kind to someone else, just out of the blue. And see the good things in your life that have happened so that you can move on, because you do have them. And I tell people, I feel like when you do a gratitude journal, one of the reasons why I like gratitude journals too, I think it really helps you see God working in your life. I know some of you watching this, you've probably been harmed by religion, you've been harmed by religious people. That's not God. If you doubt the existence of God, that's okay too. But think about the possibility of this omnipresent love that fills our universe and wants to be there for you. That's why as Christians we believe that Jesus Christ came here on this earth, was crucified, take away our sins, and Jesus is a present tense word. It wasn't Jesus was here. No, Jesus is here. He works through our lives. All we got to do is open up our hearts enough to let him in. So I hope that today we have heard that trauma and abandonment is painful, destructive. It's an ongoing presence in our life. But once we can become aware of it, just like those birds chirping, when you actually start hearing that inner critic in your head telling you how awful you are, how bad you are, you can start addressing it and you can move forward. But you can't do it by yourself. You got to be with other people. I wish you could. I have never seen anybody in my years of addiction recovery who could recover on their own. It's just not possible. It's so painful. It's so powerful. You need others. But also, not only do you need them, someday you're going to understand that you want them in your life, which I know is hard for some of you to actually believe that's true. And mothers, again, I hope you heard me clearly on Mother's Day. You are a powerful, powerful, loving force. Make sure you're healthy. Make sure that you have got your recovery in order so you can break the cycles with your kids of the stuff you faced. I've known many women who've done that, and they are so grateful they've done it. It's not easy, but it can be done. So, NorthStar Recovery, we meet on Wednesdays and Fridays at 6:30 here at Walnut Grove Baptist Church. We feed you. We have childcare. So we take away some reasons for you not to come. Come try us if you aren't coming. Just come see what it is. For maybe some of you here watching that you've been coming and then you're not coming, it's busy. Don't forget, we always need support around us. And if you're doing better in your recovery, come share that. We need people to see that so they can have motivation to change as well. And we just appreciate all of you. Just remember, God is love. Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. They understand you your real self, your real being. They don't judge you by your behaviors. They know your heart because they created you. So we always close with the prayer of serenity, and so we'd like to do that now. And again, thanks for joining me. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace. Taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. Again, thank you for joining, and have a great Mother's Day, and have a great